Exercise considerations for clients with arthritis. Hi, I'm Hayley from Parallel Coaching, and in this free video training, we're exploring and understanding the adaptations required when working with clients that have arthritis. You'll also have some mock questions to test your knowledge at the end, and you can scroll down on the blog to be able to find those. If you're not on our blog at the moment and you're on our YouTube, click the link and it will take you there so that you can see the notes and also the mock questions. So let's find out a bit about arthritis. It's often misunderstood, and people often make an assumption that it's one condition. So really, we're going to break down what those myths are, understand what arthritis is, give you a couple of examples, and then talk about exercise considerations and planning. So first of all, arthritis is not a single condition, but it's a term used to describe over 100 conditions that affect the joints of the body. All of the common symptoms between all of these conditions is pain, inflammation, and swelling that typically lead to stiffness and a restriction to mobility. So there's your first thing that you can kind of highlight as a FITPRO, that you're thinking, okay, there's going to be some mobility issues. There's going to be some sort of restriction around the joint itself. There might be inflammation and swelling, which can make the joint look a little bit distorted. And also we're talking about pain. So now we've got to think about how we manage that pain as we're working with our clients. Do we have a separate scale for pain? Can we consider how we actually work with them? So you've already, by knowing a couple of the symptoms, you can start thinking about some of the adaptations. The most prevalent form of arthritis is known as osteoarthritis, and this relates to wear and tear on the joints. If you imagine a joint, let's just say this is the knee joint, over time there's this wear and tear between where the two bones meet, and it's more prevalent in older adults than in any other age group. Osteoarthritis is characterized by the local degeneration of weight-bearing joints. So it's going to be wear and tear, it's going to be weight-bearing. Typically those of the knees, hips, spine, and hands. You'll also find that repetitive strain-related osteoarthritis is usually if someone uses their hands a lot or they're exposed to a lot of vibration work, that can have an impact on non-weight bearing like hands, fingers, etc. But usually knees, hips, spine probably take the brunt of the weight bearing load, and they're the ones that will have that degeneration around the joint, particularly renowned for being osteoarthritic. Another thing I want to say here about arthritis and osteoarthritis is that a lot of clients will come to you and they'll go, oh, I've got some arthritis in my knees. It's your job to expand on that and find out more about which type of condition has actually been diagnosed and was it diagnosed. A lot of people will diagnose themselves and call it arthritis when actually they've got a bit of pain or they've got an old injury, or maybe we're just getting a bit older and getting a little bit shakier, and actually it has to be a diagnosed condition for you to then go through and consider all the changes that need to happen to find out if it's been diagnosed or not. Next thing is that age is the largest determining factor in the development of osteoarthritis, with obesity, genetic predisposition, and injury also contributing to the risk. So let's go on and find out more about rheumatoid arthritis as another popular or most common type of arthritis. So osteoarthritis was affecting sort of that wear and tear on the joint. Rheumatoid arthritis is another common form of arthritis. It still has pain, inflammation, and swelling, but it's an autoimmune condition. And autoimmune conditions are whereby the body attacks itself, for want of a better word. It starts to break down the tissues from no particular reason or no usually untraceable reason. For this one, it's in particular that the synovial tissues are inflamed and swollen. So if you think all of our synovial joints, inside those synovial joints, we've got all of our capsule, we've got the synovial tissue, we've got the actual like liquid inside it, and it's usually the whole joint, that synovial tissue around that joint, that becomes inflamed and swollen. Now, because it's autoimmune, these are due to have or are prone to have flare-ups. So something whereby they might feel good for a little while, and then they might feel bad for a little while. They might have moments whereby inflammation gets worse for no apparent reason. And that's something to bear in mind when you're thinking about the recovery time and also the intensity and the frequency that your clients are training. Rheumatoid arthritis is usually widespread throughout the body and often affects smaller joints in the hands, wrist and feet before being noticed in larger joints like the cervical spine and the knees later on. People with inflammatory conditions go through periods where symptoms are less and periods of flare-ups when they are more. You also might want to consider things like avoiding morning physical activity during flare-ups. It could be very uncomfortable to hold dumbbells, kettlebells, etc. And it could cause quite a lot of stiffness. So later in the day might be a better time frame. It may also be that the exercise is ceased during times of extreme flare-up. So if they're really in pain, the last thing they want to do is now layer on top of that extra exercise. So think about how to avoid further damage. Sometimes it's better to not exercise or to delay it or reduce it down to active recovery, things like going for a walk, etc. That's less demanding on the body. Now, alongside, let's just think about these symptoms that we're faced with and what adaptations this immediately gives us. First of all, pain. Pain is your biggest symptom that's going to appear in these musculoskeletal conditions. And that's because your client has got distortions and damage around the particular joint every time they move. That can cause pain, and also sometimes when they don't move, that can also cause pain. So you want to have some sort of scale. I like a 1 to 10 scale. So how are you feeling on a 1 to 10 is usually like used for RPE, isn't it, and your intensity. But you could also do that for pain, or 1 to 5, and that those higher numbers are something that we want to avoid. You also might have questions, things like considering whether it's pain or whether it's discomfort that your client is feeling. So discomfort we all have, and actually it's expecting that you can feel joints or you can feel muscles when you train. And those of us that train, we know that. You expect your quad to feel your quad when you're doing the leg press. You expect to feel your chest muscles when you're doing the bench press. And some clients don't know that, they're not familiar with that. So actually it becomes an educational process. So it's understanding what they feel when they go, oh, I can feel that, or oh, I can feel my knees. What do you mean by that? Do you mean it's discomforting? Do you mean that you're just aware of it? Or is it causing pain and potentially making the damage worse? This comes down to good questioning. And that's why there's no one size fits all for the exercise that you use with arthritis. It's not a case of, oh, this client's got arthritis, therefore they can't do a squat, and that every client that has arthritis can't do that. It's not at all the case. You've got to adapt to where the symptoms are, to how big those symptoms are or how intense they are. And you also need to adapt to the amount of pain that they have. Next thing is the mobility that they have in those joints that are affected. Let's just say it's a knee. If your client can't bend that knee fully, it's going to make squatting, for example, really tricky. So you're going to want to include a regressed version, something that has less of a loading. So things like suspension training is very good for removing load from a body weight squat. Or you might use things like water-based activities like aqua is really good because it actually allows you to reduce the load on those joints. And the more that you reduce that load, the more that your client can find some space and actually exercise regardless of the condition that they have. So that's a consideration. Is weight bearing beneficial for them, or is it causing more pain? If it's in something like the hands or the wrists or the feet, then you might just need to be considerate about what exercises and what equipment you're using. So if it's, let's just say, rheumatoid arthritis is affecting the hand and it's uncomfortable on a kettlebell or a barbell or a dumbbell, could you use a soft towel instead for those exercises, or a band or a medicine ball that's easier to hold? Think about how you can adapt that so that they don't have to hold those things that make it uncomfortable or that make it hard to grip. So consider comfort as a key point. So we've kind of considered pain, we considered range of movement, comfort, and weight bearing and reducing that amount of weight bearing that's needed. Next thing is to really consider flare-ups and recovery rate. Now, in order to understand this fully, I want to share with you the super compensation model. If you don't understand supercompensation as a FITPRO already, this is something I definitely recommend you go and learn more of. It's one that we teach in probably most of our courses. It's in things like the long-term conditions course, it's in fit progressions, it's in our PT course, but it's about understanding how the body adapts to exercise. Now, we've got long-term periodization models, which like gas principle, which are long-term, but supercompensation is about the short-term response to exercise and what happens. And it's that acute phase. And this, I think, is really relevant to talk about with arthritis, so that you can understand the amount of impact we put on a client when they're already damaged can have quite a different response than what we potentially wanted. So this concept should also be considered when planning periodized progressive programs, and supercompensation can be described as the process that the body goes through in order to progress from workout to workout. There are 4 phases of supercompensation. The first phase is it lasts about 1 to 2 hours post-workout and is characterized by fatigue. So this is the point whereby you do your workout, you have a good session, afterwards you're like, oh, I feel kind of fatigued. Most people, that will last 1 to 2 hours. Someone who has an autoimmune condition like rheumatoid arthritis that we're talking about, this might last for longer. Now, if that's lasting longer than the day, and the pain or the fatigue level is still high, we might have pushed it a bit too much. So we want to make sure that this sits within a normal amount of time for this 1 to 2 hours for the recovery. Then phase 2 lasts about 1 to 2 days post-workout, and is when the physiological recovery and repair takes place. This is where you might get DOMS. Now, clients that already have pain, they're not going to enjoy DOMS, because A, they've associated pain with being something bad, they've associated pain with something damaging. So we want to ease their worries about DOMS, and we also don't want to give them lots of DOMS. So instead, gradually change the program over time, allow plenty of time for adaptation in between the exercises they're doing to avoid acute DOMS that might be detrimental to them wanting to stick to doing exercise in the first place. Phase 3 is typically 1 to 3 days, and is when supercompensation occurs and the body adapts to a higher level. So we're expecting really 3 days or so after that workout, we're now starting to perform at a micro amount better than what we were performing in the session before, because the adaptations have taken place to whatever demand we've put on the body, whether that's cardiovascular, whether it's muscular, whatever, circulatory. You expect that micro improvement. Now, with arthritis, osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, or any of the other variations, essentially, if there's damage to the body already, this is the point where we start to see that is our exercise starting to make these micro improvements that we want to see, and that they're getting stronger, they're getting more mobile, blah, blah, blah. Or is it still quite bad and remaining bad every single time after the workout? And most importantly, is there deterioration? Do the symptoms get worse? If you understand that at that point and the symptoms are starting to get worse, and that means that they're experiencing more pain, more inflammation, more restriction in range of movement, that's a point where we go, we need to stop where we are right now. We need more recovery in between before layering on another session. And we need to make sure that we're managing the intensity and the frequency of those sessions so that we're not making symptoms worse. We're only making them stronger, fitter, faster, leaner, meaner, whatever it might be. We don't want to make their arthritic condition better. We want to make their performance, their fitness, and their health better. Phase 4 is typically lasts 3 to 7 days. If no further stimulus has been applied after the workout, any progressions made during the supercompensation phase is gradually lost over time. So this means that you're ideally wanting your client to train twice a week, essentially. If your client is training less than twice a week, you can see they get to the end of that supercompensation, they come back to the straight line again. They literally finish that week at the same standard of fitness and health than they were at the beginning of the week, because there's not enough dose, there's not enough load. We almost want to get through this supercompensation model at least twice inside a week. If you are doing that multiple times inside a week, 3, 4, 5 times, then think about the recovery, think about how you're splitting those sessions so there's less demand on one area, and that it allows for the adaptation in place. And you'll know that personally in any of the other planning you've done as a FITPRO too. But think about supercompensation. think it's not with arthritis and with any condition. It's not just a case of, oh, I've adapted it. I don't give them squats, or I use the TRX. It's fine. You've got to ask questions and find out where they are with their symptoms, where they are with their pain, and moving forwards, how you're going to adapt that. Then you understand whether you're making the condition worse, whether you're benefiting their health and fitness. So think about this model when you're making your plans. Also, a little scope of practice warning in relation to medical conditions. Arthritis is a medical condition. It's a diagnosed long-term medical condition, and specific guidance and training on providing exercise programs for any condition discussed, in particular arthritis, are included in level 3 supporting clients with long-term conditions qualification. This is something that replaces the old exercise referral, and it's more specific about what you learn about the conditions and how that fits the new model, really, in terms of the healthcare that our clients get here in the UK compared to the old referral processes that were set out in the old exercise referral model. So that's where I would recommend, if you're not long-term conditions qualified or exercise referral or GP referral or whatever it might be, then you definitely need to consider it. Because if you want to work with those that have arthritis, you're actually outside your scope of practice, working with anyone that has a medical condition or who is referring a PAR-Q or PAR-Q+. So if you want to go down that route and work with those types of clients, make sure that you are qualified adequately and it's inside your scope of practice. So I'd love to know what your big takeaway has been from today. Write a comment below sharing what you've learned today, and I'd like you to do that in the comments underneath this blog or video. Arthritis is not just one condition. I'm just going to summarize my key things. Arthritis isn't just one condition. There's lots of different conditions inside it. Symptoms are different for each client, so you need to ask and be clear with your questioning. You want to make sure that you are qualified to work with clients that have conditions and make the appropriate adaptations. And you also want to adapt exercises to avoid pain and to allow for more recovery than what you would do with someone who doesn't have these types of conditions. They're my key takeaways. I hope that helps. But write a comment below sharing what you've learned today. That would be great. If you do have any questions, you can reach out to me. If you want to know more about things like the long-term conditions qualification, or you want to understand more about how you can work with these clients, or maybe you actually really enjoyed the super compensation bit and you want to know more about what's happening in terms of training stimulus, please reach out, because then we can help you understand maybe what's the best approach for you and what you need to learn. So thank you so much for joining me. And I hope you enjoy working with your clients that have arthritis and adapting those exercise considerations. Have a great day. Bye.